Truly an honor and a privilege to interview this man and talk to him about a very special thing coming up on Sunday. It is Uke's celebration of life, and the master of ceremonies is a guy I've known for quite a long time, and I think you know him too, Bob Costas. He will be here in Milwaukee. And Bob, what an honor to host this event. What does it mean to you, and just the whole, what do you want to convey on Sunday?
You know, I think on Sunday, I'm just the conduit. There'll be a number of people who played with the Brewers while Bob was in the midst of his more than half-century long tenure behind the mic. There'll be a few other people from baseball in general, but outside Milwaukee. And my job is just to keep things moving and set all those people up to tell whatever stories and offer whatever remembrances they want of Bob Uecker. It's impossible to get to everything about the rich life he had. His background story as a young player and as a player in the major leagues, a career that he made a fortune out of mocking. And when I say fortune, I don't mean just a monetary fortune, the good fortune of all the high regard he had from people in and out of baseball. You know, Johnny Carson and the Major League movies and the Miller Lite commercials and all the rest. And then his career both as a national broadcaster, where he connected with me and Joe Morgan in the 90s, and then most important with the Brewers. That life is so rich personally and professionally that you can only nod in each direction. You can't fill out the palette completely. But I'm thinking that 90% or more of the people who will be in attendance on Sunday have some sense of Bob Uecker's life and career, many of them a deep sense of it. They don't need to be reminded of all of it. They just want to celebrate him one last time.
I mentioned to you that I recently talked to Bob Jr. and Judy Uecker, and they are touched and honored that you're doing this. And they also mentioned how close the two of you were. I saw both of you in action. I was at Cooperstown. I've seen you in the booth with Bob, obviously, a number of times. How close were the two Bobs?
We were very friendly, very close. But Bob was such an open and approachable guy that so many people would have said they were a friend of Bob Uecker's. And in another sense, there are people who he never actually physically met who thought of him as a friend. That's the beauty of local baseball, especially if the announcer is distinctive and really good, as Uecker was. Year after year, summer after summer, you feel as if you're not just listening to a broadcaster, you're listening to a friend. And I think it was really a mark of who he was, that he could have gone national completely. Yeah, he did games on ABC with Howard Cosell and with Al Michaels. He did games on NBC with me and Joe Morgan. He could have done that exclusively. Or he could have gone to the Yankees or the Dodgers. Or he could have had a career just in show business. But baseball was at the heart of who he was, and so was Wisconsin, and he always came back to that.
As a Wisconsin kid, it always blew me away, Bob, that he actually knew me and he was the soundtrack of my life. So yeah, it always blows me away. But you mentioned another classic name, Howard Cosell, and we all know how Howard could be. You have the classic stories of Howard Cosell and Bob Uecker and how they played off each other.
Yeah, and I wasn't really part of it. Al Michaels was the other guy in the booth. And Howard, even if he liked you, could be overbearing at times. And they're in the middle of a Monday night game, and Uecker is listening to Howard suggest some kind of strategy that made no baseball sense. And Uecker tries to gently, if not correct him, then differ with him. And Cosell persists, and Uecker differs with him again. And then Cosell says, Uecker, you're awfully truculent tonight. You do know what truculent means, don't you? And without missing a beat, Uecker says, of course I do, Howard. If you had a truck and I borrowed it, then that would be a truck you lent. Very, very rarely was Howard Cosell ever flabbergasted. That was one instance when he was. He had no comeback.
His comedic timing was impeccable. I would argue he's up there with the top comedians of anyone, Bob.
Yeah.
But you also had a great experience. 1982 World Series, my understanding is you're the pregame host, and we all know County Stadium, God bless it. You know, Marty and Ed Wellscott, Marty's still there to this day. They cooked up the best brats or whatever, and somehow, like, you got put up to the brat challenge. Do I have this right?
Well, the brat challenge came later, but I hosted the pregame and the postgame for NBC. Vin Scully didn't join NBC's Game of the Week in postseason coverage of '83. So the booth is Joe Garagiola, Tony Kubek, both legendary and in the broadcaster's wing of the Hall of Fame, and joined for the World Series by Dick Enberg, then at the height of his career. And he, too, is in the broadcaster's wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame. So after I conclude the pregame, I'm just wandering around the press box, and I stick my head into the radio booth to say hi to Uke. And Uke says, "You got to try a brat." So I do. And it's so good with the secret stadium sauce that during that game, it was the fourth game of the World Series, when they still played an occasional day game in the World Series, a Saturday afternoon, fourth game of the World Series, I ate 4 brats during the game. Now, this is quite a feat for someone my size. I went from a welterweight to a middleweight just in the course of the 9 innings of that game. Okay, so word about this gets around. And the next year, I get a letter. This is back when people actually wrote letters, from a guy in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, named Tim Shoe Sullivan. And he brags that his friend, Ma Pesh, holds the record for brat consumption in a single game at County Stadium. And he includes a Polaroid of Ma, who since has sadly passed away. And Ma was tipping the Toledos at about $3.50 at least, okay? And he's wearing like some bib overalls, like Junior Samples in the old Hee Haw show. And Shoe Sullivan is laying out the fact that Ma supposedly consumed 11 brats in one game in 1972. And he includes the box score of the game between the Brewers and the Orioles, as if this provides proof. Here's the box score of the game, as if this provides proof. And then the postscript is, this was all the more surprising to Ma and his friends, because prior to that day, he had never eaten well against Baltimore. So I'm thinking to myself, if I'm really going to take up this challenge against Ma, there has to be a handicap here. He outweighs me more than 2 to 1. If he eats 10 and I eat 5, it's at least a draw. Maybe I win. So supposedly we were setting this thing up to happen in the parking lot when people are tailgating. And for whatever reason, it never happened, although the correspondence did. And for years and years, it was like, when are we going to do this? We never did it. So I guess Ma won by forfeit.
Well, you're a winner in life, though, Bob, because what I'm going to do is Secret Stadium sauce is available in certain select grocery stores in the Milwaukee area. All you got to do, my friend, is give me your address, and I'll ship you a whole box of it. You know what I'm saying?
That's very kind of you. That reminds me of something.
Okay.
Every Christmas for years and years, Uke would send me a shipment of Johnsonville brats, along with the Secret Stadium sauce. So we were well stocked year to year.
That's beautiful. And in combination with that, Bob, was he one of the, not just a baseball announcer, not just a former player, but I kind of hinted at it, was he one of the funniest, if not the funniest human being that you've ever encountered?
Yes, but don't just take it from me. People in show business, professional comedians have said that Uke was one of the funniest people they have ever been around, and that, as you said earlier, he had the timing and delivery of a professional comedian. And what worked was that he had a persona. You know, Rodney Dangerfield had a persona. The jokes he told wouldn't have been funny coming from anyone other than Rodney, because they played into the persona. So Uke's persona was his futility as a ball player. And he would deliver these lines that cracked Johnny Carson and others up with a completely straight face, totally deadpan. Now, the truth of the matter is, there's a lot of funny stuff that Uke did in and around baseball that we cannot tell here.
Yes.
The director's cut of Uke's work is hysterically funny as well. And most people know, because I've told this story before, maybe others have, that if you were in the booth with him and he liked you and trusted you, he would sometimes, for an inning or so, do a parallel broadcast using the cough button. So he'd have the regular delivery. Here's Joe Jones hitting 268. Then he'd hit the cough button, turn his head toward you, say something absurdly funny about Joe Jones or whatever was going on, and then without missing a beat, go right back, swinging the ground ball to second base. If you got the unedited version of that, you would be in hysterics.
He was the master of the cough button, and it was so funny.
Yep.
And he slipped fake sponsors in last year, Bob. His last year broadcasting, Levering and Lane Grindle would sit in the booth and roll over laughing, because he would always mix in like, Maxine's laundromat and steak and eggs restaurant or whatever you want. And that was Bob.
Yeah.
That was Bob.
Well, he knew he could get away with it. He was an institution. And it wasn't like he was big timing anybody. He was just having a good time. And on one occasion I said to him when he was doing that cough button thing, I said, Uke, what if you miss the button? What if the wires get crossed? He goes, what the hell are they going to do? Throw me in baseball jail?
Oh, it's so good. And the other thing is he busted chops. He was so good at he knew that he loved you if he busted your chops. He self-deprecating humor, but I know he picked on you, he picked on me, but that was a term of endearment, wasn't it, that you were in?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If he took a little shot at you, always well-crafted, it wasn't just some generic thing, well-crafted and specific to you, that meant he liked you.
So what did he mean to Milwaukee, and what does Milwaukee mean to him?
Well, Milwaukee obviously meant everything to him because, as we said before, he could have left. He was a big national star. He could have left, and he stayed. Wisconsin was where he was born and raised. It's where his career began as a player with the Milwaukee Braves, and it's where his more than half-century career as a Hall of Fame baseball announcer played out. What he meant to Milwaukee, I think it's fair to say this. Even Hall of Famers like Robin Yount and Paul Molitor or Ted Simmons would say that Uke was the biggest star on the team. If they played in another ballpark, yeah, people recognize the all-stars on the Brewers roster. But the big response was to Uke. It was like Harry Carey. When the Cubs were good in the 80s, Ryne Sandberg and others are their stars. Harry Carey was as big a star as any of them because he had a bigger-than-life personality as a broadcaster. And Uke, in his own way, was also bigger than life.
You've been around a lot of famous people. How one of a kind was he?
Completely one of a kind. One of a kind and the word unique, they're thrown around carelessly. They don't always apply. But Uke was a great broadcaster, yes, and a great public personality in terms of being an entertainer. Think of the Major League movies. He's actually the biggest star of those movies, taking nothing away from some of the other big stars who were in those movies.
You've been a part of the media longer than I have, and whether you're a play-by-play announcer, whether you cover the team, whether you're a YouTuber or a social media influencer, players usually keep media, whatever term you want to use for media, at arm's length. You've seen the video. Bob was literally in the celebrations, doing the wind-up, doing the lawnmower, champagne on it. How much did this team love him, and how much did that warm your heart that he was that guy that could literally be in the clubhouse and be one of the guys?
They loved him boundlessly. I think most people watching this are aware that when the Brewers would make the playoffs, they voted him a full share, which of course he immediately donated to charity. He was part of the team. If you're around a while, you do a good job, you're a decent guy, then you get some respect and some connection with players, either on your own team or if you're a network broadcaster, you're fairly well known to all the teams. But there's a difference between that and the kind of connection and bond that Uke had with the team, with the city, and with the entire state of Wisconsin, and with every player that ever played for the Brewers. It's close to incomparable. Even great announcers like Vin Scully or Jack Buck or Ernie Harwell, they were greatly respected by the players and the managers. But it wasn't like they were one of them. Now, of course, part of the reason for that is that you did play in the big leagues. He would tell you he played badly, and the statistics kind of back him up, but he was a player, and that was the point of entry. And then after that, his personality, his sense of humor, and all the rest further connected him.
And the final thing, Bob, is that it was his favorite team, his favorite city. What would it mean to him if they did actually win the World Series? And you're one of our greatest baseball historians on the planet. Do the Brewers have as legit a shot as anybody of making the World Series?
Oh, I think they do have a very legitimate shot of making it to the World Series. The way the standings look now, it's more than likely that they win the division, and therefore they're exempt from the wild card round, that they have the best record in the league, so they would have home field advantage in any series in which they play, and they play the game the right way. I'm not saying anything that's terribly insightful here. Everyone knows it. They do all the little things that are gratifying to someone who's a real and knowledgeable baseball fan. They do the little things that add up. They seldom, if ever, beat themselves, and they force other teams to beat themselves. So they're playing as we tape this. Their 14-game winning streak was just ended by Cincinnati yesterday. But they are the hottest team in baseball. They have a really good chance. I think if they were to make it to the World Series, in a sense, it would be bittersweet. There would be a whole lot of "this is for you" and a whole lot of remembrances, but also a shame that you couldn't take that ride with them.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that, my friend. Bob Costas, one of the best, if not the best. Thank you for doing this, and hit it out of the park for Uecker on Sunday with his celebration of life.
Thanks very much, Lance.
No problem. Bob Costas joining us right here on CBS 58.